Rain fell like silver needles over the Manchester streets that night, drumming softly against the roof of a small, dimly lit garage at the corner of Ashton Road. Inside, Liam Parker wiped grease from his hands, watching the clock tick past closing time. He was tired, not just in body, but in the kind of way that sits heavy in your bones when life keeps asking for more than you have to give. Then he heard it, the sputter of an engine dying just outside. A silver SUV rolled to a stop by the curb, steam rising from under the bonnet. From the driver's seat stepped a woman in a raincoat, her hair damp, her voice soft but urgent. "Sorry, I think my car's dead. Can you take a quick look?" Liam almost said no. He was late to pick up his daughter Ellie from his neighbor's flat, but something about her tone, polite, hesitant, almost too humble for someone driving a car that nice, made him stay. That decision, that small act of kindness, would change everything. Because the woman standing in the rain wasn't just anyone. She was Charlotte Hale, CEO of the very company whose logo gleamed on the broken car's bonnet. And tonight, fate had quietly put them in each other's path. The garage smelled of oil and damp concrete. Liam popped the bonnet and leaned in, flashlight in hand. "Alternators shot," he muttered. "Batteries drained, too." Charlotte stood a few feet away, hugging her arms for warmth. "That sounds expensive." He glanced up, noticing her shoes. Not designer, just worn leather boots. Maybe she wasn't rich after all. "Yeah, bit of a pain," he said. "But you're lucky. I've got a spare part that'll fit. Won't cost you anything tonight." She frowned. "You'll fix it for free?" Liam shrugged. "You're stranded in the rain. I can't exactly charge you for bad luck, can I?" A small smile flickered across her lips, the kind that said she wasn't used to kindness without a reason. "That's really kind of you. Thank you." "Don't mention it," he said, getting to work. An hour later, her car hummed back to life. Liam wiped his hands and nodded toward the road. "You're good to go." Charlotte hesitated, pulling a folded note from her bag. "At least let me pay you something." He shook his head. "Keep it. Maybe pay it forward." She looked at him for a long moment. "You sound like a man who's had to pay things forward more than once." Liam smiled faintly. "Something like that." When she drove off into the rain, he didn't even ask her name. He just watched the taillights fade, unaware that this small moment would ripple through both their lives in ways neither could imagine. The next morning, Charlotte Hale stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her office, 23 floors above the heart of Manchester. The city sprawled below, gray and alive. On her desk, the emblem of Hale Motors gleamed, the same logo that had been on her car's bonnet the night before. Her assistant, Hannah, entered with a stack of documents. "You're early, ma'am. Everything all right?" Charlotte nodded absently. "Just couldn't sleep?" Images of the mechanic, his calloused hands, his quiet eyes, the way he refused money, kept replaying in her mind. There had been no flattery in him, no recognition of who she was. Just a man doing good because it was the right thing to do. She sipped her coffee and stared at the rain-specked glass. "Do we still have that community initiative running? The one for local garages?" "Yes, but most small ones don't apply. Paperwork scares them off." Charlotte's gaze softened. "Find out about a garage called Parker Auto on Ashton Road." Hannah blinked. "Parker Auto? Why that one?" Charlotte smiled faintly. "Call it curiosity." Meanwhile, in that very same garage, Liam was helping Ellie with her school lunch. She sat on a stool by the counter, swinging her legs, munching crisps. "Daddy," she said between bites, "Mrs. Thompson said when you do good things come back." He chuckled. "That so?" She nodded seriously. "So maybe fixing that lady's car will bring you something good." Liam smiled, brushing a strand of her curly hair aside. "Maybe it already did." Got to spend more time with my favorite girl. She giggled, but her words lingered with him long after she left for school. He didn't know it yet, but Ellie was right. The kindness he gave away last night was already finding its way back, in the most unexpected form. Charlotte arrived at Parker Auto 3 days later, wearing a navy trench coat and a knitted scarf. Nothing that hinted she was one of the most powerful women in Manchester's business world. Liam was under the hood of an old Ford when he noticed her reflection in the metal. He straightened, surprise flickering across his face. "You again? Car trouble already?" She smiled. "No, I just wanted to say thank you properly." He wiped his hands on a rag. "You already did." "I brought coffee," she said, holding out 2 cups. "Thought you could use one." For a second he hesitated, then took it. "You didn't have to, but thanks." Charlotte wandered around the garage, observing the faded posters, the cracked concrete floor, the single small heater trying to fight off the chill. "You work here alone?" "Most days, yeah. My mate helps part-time, but it's just me and Ellie most of the time." "Your daughter?" He nodded, a soft pride in his tone. 7 years old, smartest kid you'll ever meet. Charlotte smiled gently. "She's lucky to have you." He didn't answer, but she saw the faint sadness in his eyes, the kind that spoke of nights spent counting coins and silent prayers, whispered to no one in particular. When she left, she looked back once. Liam was already back to work, sleeves rolled up, humming under his breath, and for the first time in months, Charlotte Hale felt something stir in her chest. Something real. Back in her office, Charlotte couldn't focus. Her board members discussed profits and forecasts, but her thoughts drifted to a greasy garage on Ashton Road. After the meeting, she pulled up Parker Auto's registration file. It was a small, family-owned business struggling to stay afloat. Tax arrears, overdue rent, no formal contracts. Hannah noticed her frown. "Bad numbers?" Charlotte hesitated. "No, just good people buried under bad luck." That evening, she called her legal department. "I want a list of independent garages we could partner with. Small ones, locally owned. Let's start a program to provide genuine parts at cost price." "Under whose approval, ma'am?" Charlotte smiled. "Mine." Quietly. The next morning, a courier arrived at Parker Auto with an envelope marked Hale Motors Community Partnership. Liam opened it, brows furrowed. Inside was a letter announcing that his garage had been selected for a pilot program offering free replacement parts and technical support. He blinked in disbelief. There must be some mistake. But at the bottom was a note, written in delicate handwriting. "For those who fix more than just cars. C.H." He stared at the initials for a long time, then smiled faintly. As weeks passed, Charlotte found more excuses to visit the garage. Sometimes she brought Ellie small treats, homemade biscuits, or a new storybook. Ellie adored her instantly. "Miss Charlotte reads better than Daddy," she giggled once. Liam laughed. "She's got that fancy accent. Makes everything sound proper." Charlotte blushed. "It's not fancy, just Southern." "Southern?" he teased. "You make it sound like you're from another world." She smiled, but part of her knew he was right. Their worlds were different, one built on boardrooms and power, the other on grease and grit. Still, those worlds began to blur. Charlotte found herself staying longer each visit, helping Ellie with homework, watching Liam work. His hands moved with quiet precision, his patience endless. Once, while tightening a bolt, he looked up and said softly, "You know, most people only stop here when they need something. You just stop by." Charlotte met his gaze. "Maybe I do need something." He frowned slightly. "Like what?" She hesitated, heart racing. A reminder that kindness still exists. That night, Liam couldn't sleep. He replayed her words again and again, wondering who she really was, and why a woman like her kept showing up at his small, forgotten corner of the city. Winter rolled into Manchester, like a slow gray wave. Frost clung to the windows of the garage, and Liam worked with gloves half torn from overuse. Money was tight again, but his spirit never seemed to falter. Charlotte began visiting more often, sometimes with new tools donated from a friend, sometimes just to sit and talk while Liam worked. He never asked why. He just liked that she was there. One evening, as Ellie sketched quietly in a corner, Charlotte leaned against a tool chest and watched Liam replace a radiator hose. "You're good at this," she said softly. He chuckled. "Been doing it since I was 16. Cars are easier than people. At least you can see what's broken." Charlotte's smile faded. "And what about you, Liam? Anyone ever fixed you?" He paused, wrench still in his hand. "Don't think I'm the kind that gets fixed, love. Just keep running until I stop." Something in his tone cracked her heart a little. She wanted to tell him she could help, that she had the power to change everything for him. But she stayed silent, knowing that the truth, if spoken too soon, might ruin the fragile trust growing between them. Outside, snow began to fall. And for the first time, Charlotte didn't feel like a CEO at all. She felt like a woman standing beside a man who reminded her what humanity really looked like. At Hale Motors headquarters, whispers began to spread. "Have you noticed the boss's weekend disappearances?" one manager said. "She's seeing someone, I heard," another replied. "Someone ordinary. A mechanic, can you believe?" Charlotte ignored the murmurs, but she knew it couldn't last. When you live in a glass tower, even kindness becomes gossip. That Friday, her brother and board member confronted her. "Charlotte, what's going on? You've missed 2 investor dinners. You're distracted. People are starting to talk." She folded her arms. "I don't owe anyone my private life, James," he sighed. "Maybe not. But if the press finds out you're spending time with someone like that, it'll affect the company. Think about your reputation." Her jaw tightened. "Maybe my reputation isn't worth much if it can't survive honesty." That night, she drove to the garage but stayed parked across the street, watching Liam lock up. He lifted Ellie into his arms, her laughter echoing in the cold night. For the first time, Charlotte realized she wasn't not just drawn to his kindness. She was falling in love with the life he lived. Simple, real, full of the things her world had traded for glass walls and empty titles. It was a Saturday when everything almost came undone. Liam had just finished changing tires when a sleek black car pulled up, a company vehicle, polished to perfection. A man in a suit stepped out and approached him. "Mr. Parker?" Liam wiped his hands. "Yeah?" The man handed him a card. "I'm with Hale Motors. I'm here to inspect your facility for partnership approval." Liam blinked. "Partnership? We already got a letter weeks ago." "Yes, but the CEO wants to ensure everything is legitimate." As the man looked around, Charlotte appeared at the entrance, her eyes widening in shock. "Mark, what are you doing here?" The man froze. "Ms. Hale?" Liam turned slowly. "Ms. Hale?" His voice was quiet, but sharp enough to slice through the air. Charlotte's throat tightened. "Liam, I can explain." "You're her?" He laughed bitterly. "Of course. Makes sense now. The coffee, the tools, the letter. All charity from the rich lady who felt sorry for the mechanic." "No," she whispered, stepping forward. "It wasn't like that." But he backed away. "You should have just told me. I thought you were different." Ellie, standing nearby, looked between them, confused. "Daddy, why are you angry at Miss Charlotte?" Liam forced a smile for his daughter. "Go inside, love." Then he turned to Charlotte, his voice breaking. "You said you needed a reminder that kindness still exists. Guess we both did." He walked away, leaving her standing in the fading daylight. A woman who had everything, except the one thing she truly wanted. Days passed, but for Liam, they felt like years. The garage was quieter without Charlotte's soft laughter echoing between the metal walls. Even Ellie noticed. "Daddy, is Miss Charlotte not coming back?" He swallowed hard. "She's busy, love. Got her own world to run." Ellie frowned. "But I liked her." "So did I," he whispered, almost to himself. Meanwhile, Charlotte sat alone in her office, staring at the city lights below. Every reflection in the glass looked like him. Tired eyes, gentle smile, that quiet strength. She had built empires, negotiated million-pound deals, yet couldn't he fix the one thing that mattered most, the heart she broke without meaning to. Finally, she made a decision. She called her assistant. "Hannah, cancel my weekend meetings." "Of course, ma'am. May I ask why?" Charlotte smiled faintly. "Because I need to go apologize to someone who doesn't care about board meetings." That night, she stood outside Parker Auto again. But the shutters were down, the sign reading, "Closed until further notice." Her chest tightened. "No," she whispered to herself. She didn't know it yet, but Liam wasn't hiding from her. He was fighting for his life in a different way because the council had just issued a notice of eviction on his garage due to unpaid rent. Liam sat in his small flat, paperwork spread across the table, Ellie drawing quietly beside him. The eviction letter lay open like a wound. He rubbed his temples. "I'll find another place, sweetheart. We'll be fine." Ellie looked up. "Will Miss Charlotte help us?" He shook his head. "No, love. We don't ask for help from people who don't mean what they say." But deep down, he didn't truly believe that. He knew Charlotte's kindness wasn't fake, only hidden behind fear and pride, just like his own. Still, pride was a stubborn thing. When the tow truck arrived to remove the last of his equipment, Liam stood there in silence. The place that had been his life for 10 years, gone in minutes. The next morning, he took Ellie's hand and walked her to school. His heart felt heavier than the sky above. Across the street, a familiar silver SUV was parked. Charlotte stepped out, looking nervous. "Liam?" she called softly. He didn't turn. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," she said, voice trembling. "But I had to see you." "You already saw enough. Please, just listen." He finally turned, anger and hurt flashing in his eyes. "You lied to me, Charlotte. Everything and the visits, the help, the parts, was any of it real?" "Yes," she said, tears brimming. "All of it." But before she could say more, Ellie ran out of the school gates and hugged her. "Miss Charlotte, I missed you." Charlotte knelt, hugging the little girl tightly, tears falling freely. "I missed you too, sweetheart." When she looked up, Liam was already walking away, his silhouette fading into the misty Manchester morning. Charlotte didn't give up. The next week, she held a board meeting that shocked everyone. "Effective immediately," she announced. "Hale Motors will establish a grant for independent garages, starting with Parker Auto." One director scoffed. "Why would we fund failing garages? They're not profitable." Charlotte's voice sharpened. "Because they're the backbone of our industry. Without them, we'd have no customers, no trust, no future." Her brother narrowed his eyes. "This is about him, isn't it?" She met his gaze without hesitation. "It's about what we should stand for." When the motion passed, she drove straight to Ashton Road, the garage still empty, dust settling where life used to be. She left a letter taped to the door. "Liam, sometimes it takes losing everything to see what matters. You once told me cars are easier than people because you can see what's broken. Well, I'm broken, and I don't want to fix it without you. Charlotte." She didn't know if he'd ever read it, but for the first time, she stopped hiding behind the CEO title and started living like the woman he inspired her to become. A month passed. Winter slowly softened into a pale, wet spring. Liam found temporary work at a warehouse, fixing forklifts and engines that nobody else wanted to touch. It paid little, but enough to keep Ellie in school and food on the table. Still, every time he passed Ashton Road, his heart twisted. The shuttered garage stood like a memory he couldn't let go of, and taped to its rusting door was that letter. He'd read it once, the night he found it, and though he'd never admitted it aloud, he'd read it again every week since. Charlotte's words haunted him. "I'm broken, and I don't want to fix it without you." He told himself he didn't believe her, that she was just another rich woman trying to fix what didn't need her pity. But every time Ellie mentioned her, every time he saw that silver SUV in his mind, something inside him cracked a little more. One evening, as he walked home under the fading Manchester sky, he saw a news headline in a shop window. Hale Motors announces community grants, small garages to receive new funding. He froze. Below the headline was a photograph of Charlotte, smiling faintly, tired, but proud. He didn't know whether to feel angry or amazed. She'd actually done it. Across town, Charlotte stood in the factory yard of one of the first garages to receive her program's support. The smell of oil and rain filled the air, familiar, grounding. An older mechanic shook her hand. "Never thought a company'd look out for people like us again? You're a good one, Miss Hale." She smiled politely, but her eyes were distant. Her mind was still on one man, the only one who hadn't taken her calls, hadn't answered her letter. Later that night, she sat alone in her flat overlooking the River Irwell. The city shimmered below, but she felt utterly alone. She whispered to herself, "What's success worth if there's no one to share it with?" Just then, her phone buzzed. A new message. From an unknown number. "Garage looks better with your words on the door. Ellie says hi." Her heart leapt. She didn't need to ask who it was. Her hands trembled as she typed back, "Tell her I miss her, and you." There was no reply. Not that night. But for the first time in weeks, Charlotte fell asleep with a smile, hope flickering quietly like a streetlight that refuses to go dark. A week later, Charlotte was invited to the Hale Motors charity exhibition, an event filled with business leaders, investors, and flashing cameras. It was everything she used to live for. And now, everything she wanted to escape. Halfway through the night, she slipped outside onto the balcony, letting the cold air hit her face. She'd done everything right, saved the company's image, helped the small garages. Yet something was still missing. Then she heard a familiar voice behind her. "You clean up well." She turned sharply. Liam stood there wearing a simple suit, hair slightly out of place, a nervous smile tugging at his lips. Her breath caught. "Liam," he shrugged. "Your assistant tracked me down, said you wanted me to come. Didn't seem right to ignore her twice." Charlotte smiled faintly. "I didn't think you would." They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the party fading behind them. "I saw what you did," Liam said finally. "The grants, the program, all of it. You didn't have to." "I wanted to," she whispered. "Not for charity, for change, for people like you." He looked down, then back at her. "You could have just said sorry, you know." "I tried," she said softly. "You stopped listening." He smiled, tired, but real. "I'm listening now." The city lights reflected in her eyes as she took a step closer. "Then hear this. I didn't fall for you because you fixed my car. I fell because you fixed something I didn't know was broken in me." For a long moment he said nothing, then reached for her hand, and when their fingers intertwined, it felt like the first quiet breath after a storm. After that night, things didn't instantly return to perfect. Liam was cautious, Charlotte patient. But both were learning to meet in the middle, where pride and forgiveness could finally shake hands. She began visiting his new workspace, a rented corner in a refurbished warehouse, part of Hale Motors' small garage initiative. The sign above the door read, "Parker and Hale Auto, Independent Partners." "Looks good, doesn't it?" she said one morning, admiring the new sign. Liam smiled. "A bit fancy for a bloke like me." Then it's about time you started believing you deserve fancy, she teased. Ellie ran up, waving a spanner. Miss Charlotte, Daddy said you're helping us fix cars now. Charlotte laughed. Something like that, sweetheart, though I think you and your dad are teaching me more than I'm teaching you. For the first time, laughter filled the air again. Light, easy, genuine. It wasn't about saving anyone anymore. It was about building something together. Months passed, and the small garage partnership program grew beyond anyone's expectation. Newspapers called it the Heart of Hale Motors, crediting Charlotte with revitalizing the industry's faith in local hands. But for Charlotte, success was now measured differently. In shared coffee cups, greasy overalls, and Ellie's constant chatter about our garage. One rainy evening, after a long day of repairs, Charlotte found Liam standing outside the garage, staring at the glowing city skyline. "Thinking again?" she asked gently. He smiled without looking at her. "Just remembering that night you broke down here. If I'd gone home 5 minutes earlier, you wouldn't have fixed my car," she said softly, "and I wouldn't have found what I was missing." He turned to her, his expression softer than the rain. "You know, I used to think fate was just a word people used to excuse bad timing. And now I think fate's just kindness disguised as coincidence." Charlotte's eyes glistened. "You always say things like that when I least expect it." "Yeah, well," he said, wrapping an arm around her. "That's kind of my thing." She rested her head against his shoulder as the rain began to fall. Slow, steady, cleansing. Two broken worlds finally welded together by love and the courage to start again. A year later, Parker and Hale Auto had become one of the most respected local garages in Manchester. The walls that once echoed with silence now buzzed with life, mechanics laughing, tools clattering, music playing softly in the background. Ellie ran around with a little clipboard, pretending to be manager. Charlotte worked side by side with Liam, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back, grease smudged on her cheek, a CEO who finally knew what real work, real happiness, and real love looked like. One afternoon, as the golden light filtered through the windows, Liam leaned on the counter and said, "Funny, isn't it? All this started with one broken car." Charlotte smiled, handing him a cup of tea. "Maybe it wasn't the car that needed fixing." He chuckled. "No, maybe it was us." They stood there in quiet contentment. No grand declarations, no fireworks, just the peaceful hum of a life they'd built together from the ground up. And as the rain began once more outside, Elias' laughter echoed through the open doors, a sound that reminded them both that love doesn't always arrive dressed in perfection. Sometimes it comes covered in dust and grease, and it stays because it's real.